Um, okay, so what I want to do now is just take about 10 minutes and share some resources with you on where you can go to continue learning. So this is a book that I love. We've got several copies of it around my lab, and a lot of the folks in my lab who are coming from a biology background refer to this book. And this book covers a lot of things like interacting with command line tools. And so if you want to learn more about like how to basically get those commands like CD and LS and various more complicated things. This is a great resource, and it's like the title implies, it's written for biologists. So it's not assuming that you have any computational background. It does also go into Python programming a little bit, but it's a good introduction, but it's not the greatest content on Python programming, but it's a good way to get started. So I highly recommend this one. It's a few years old at this point. I'm hoping they'll do a new edition, but it's all still very relevant. Of course, the ITCR Training Network, their website has tons of good resources on it. And so if you want to learn more about some of these topics like reproducibility, and you want to think about how you can automate workflows, head there and check out their courses. And then I just wanted to mention the QIIME2 main documentation. And so if you go to docs.qiime2.org, you're going to find our main source of user documentation. And it basically is going to take you through a lot of the stuff like we were going through in this workshop, but in a bit more detail, and often just kind of talking about why we're doing something a certain way. It also is going to fill in some of the gaps that we didn't have time to get to in this course. And so this tutorial in particular, the moving pictures tutorial, is probably the resource that most folks have used to learn QIIME2 on their own. And this is going to go from raw sequence data, from raw FASTQ files, all the way through the visualizations and statistics. And so some of them will look familiar. It'll be some of the same visualizations that we generated in here, some different ones. And there's also some taxonomy plotting, which we didn't really get to in here, but that's all covered in this. You can run that through Galaxy. You can run that through the command line using the Docker container that we have here. That would be a really quick way to get started with it for you. Or you can run it through a Python API if you're interested in that. The one thing I want to mention, so there's a lot of other content in the QIIME2 documentation. You can see like the table of contents over on the left. We are in the early stages of doing a big refactoring of this documentation. And so it's been a long time since we've thought about how it's all organized, and a lot has changed since we did the original organization of this. And so over the next few months, we're going to have a new user documentation site coming up. The best way to learn about that is to join for free on the QIIME2 forum. And then if you join, you can opt into getting our announcements feed by email. And so then that way you'll just get an email when we put something up in our announcements. That's really low traffic, like probably on average about one post a month. So you probably get one email from us a month on that. But when we do new releases of QIIME, that's where they go. We will always announce them. If we were to identify a bug that could impact analysis results, that is where we would post about it. And so that's a good way just to make sure that you're staying up to date. And then when we have events like this coming up, or when we have exciting new resources available, like our new user documentation, that's where you're going to find that, is on that announcements feed. You can also see the announcements feed if you just go to qiime2.org. That's embedded in there. And so you can just get a feel for the kind of stuff that is going to show up. And I've mentioned this many times now, but really the hub of activity around QIIME2 is the QIIME2 forum. Tons of good resources, lots of engaged folks on there. So like on average, we've got probably about 20 or 30 different people engaging on there every week. We have hundreds of posts happening there every week. And then we have some resources in there that folks in the community have shared. And so this is a list of some of the most popular ones in there. But you can see like this was a post that a student put together and talks about alpha and beta diversity metrics and gives citations for all of the metrics that we have in QIIME2. And this post has been viewed over 49,000 times. So really good resources. We also many years ago had somebody translate parts of our documentation into Chinese. That was huge, helpful resource. That one's been viewed almost 32,000 times. It's fairly old at this point. It'd be great to get something like that updated again. And we're always looking for folks who are interested in doing that type of thing. Really, the forum contributors are essential members of our community. And like I mentioned earlier, it's a great way, in which we meet new people, we start making new connections. People out there in the community can connect on things that they're interested in. And so it's a good way just to find other people who are using the same tools and interested in the same things that you are. We also have a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel has several full-length courses on it, as well as a few videos, a few like individual videos covering special topics. And we have, so like this first one, this cancer microbiome intervention tutorial, that is probably like the equivalent of a semester-long class, maybe like a 3-hour-a-week class. And the videos are broken up into topic segments. And so they're anywhere from 10 minutes long to about an hour long, just depending on what the topic is and how in-depth it is. You can expect in there that it's going to be a lot like what we did here this week, just covering things in more depth and covering more content. That also, this cancer microbiome intervention is using some of the same data that we used in this tutorial. One of the other nice things about these is we have copy edited English subtitles in these. And so I've heard that those can be really helpful for folks who are not native English speakers. And so that's all in there too. And those are not the auto-generated subtitles. We started with those and then we had somebody go through and copy edit all of them just because things like command names tend to get mangled in the auto-generated ones. For folks who might be interested in developing plugins, so if you're a methods developer or if you work with some methods developers, we have a new resource that you can find at develop.qiime2.org, and that was on one of the stickers I gave folks today. But this basically goes through how to build QIIME2 plugins and various other topics related to bioinformatics software development. And there's sort of a companion resource for this. And so this is a book that I put together for my undergraduate bioinformatics course over the period of several years. This was a course that was geared toward biology students. And so this would be good for a lot of the folks in this room too, I think. But this is getting a little bit more into like fundamentals of bioinformatics, and it's talking about some of the algorithms and it's looking at implementations of the algorithms. And so the way this fits in with developing with QIIME2 is that developing with QIIME2 builds a plugin that's doing some very fundamental bioinformatics things, like doing things like essentially like a BLAST database search or doing pairwise sequence alignment. And so this kind of shows how to build the end user tool like a plugin while this one talks about how it all works under the hood, how a pairwise alignment is happening. And there's also video content from this on the YouTube channel. One of the best ways that I find to learn is by teaching. And so all of our course materials are online for free. You are more than welcome to take these back. The Docker containers are accessible. And so, take these back to your lab and show folks what you learned. And this is really how I learned a lot of this stuff. And so I, started the QIIME1 forum and the QIIME2 forum, and just interacting with users and doing these kind of workshops really helped me solidify my knowledge on all of these topics. And so I get all of my students and all of my staff involved in teaching these events too, because when you have to teach something like this, you really just have to sit down and figure out what parts of it you don't understand, what parts of it you don't know how to explain, and that really helps solidify your learning and building your knowledge. This was a little bit out of order, but if there are folks out there who are building plugins for QIIME2, we regularly see papers that are published that are either focused on a plugin or that mention like we built a QIIME2 plugin. So it's a good way, say for grad students to get a dissertation chapter out is like write a plugin, write a software note on it, write a tutorial with it, and then that kind of comes together into a dissertation chapter. And Chloe is going to have one of those dissertation chapters that is talking about Q2FMT and is going to be building from this tutorial that we worked through over the last few days to illustrate how to use it. Last, I just have some links in here. So you can just go through these. These are just for you to work through on your own. And just want to thank you all for coming. We are going to turn it back over to the ITN team. So we're not quite done yet. And like I mentioned, we'll be here for about an hour afterwards for some additional question and answer time. One last thing I'll mention is if you refresh this slide deck, if you pulled it up a couple days ago and then go all the way back to the first slide, there's now a link in there for a PDF download of the slide. And so if you want to grab these, just refresh to make sure you get that link, and then you'll have that. Okay. With that, I am turning it back over to Carrie.
All right, well, we're almost done. So just wanted to remind you about our courses available at our website. And remember that there's a couple of ways that our courses are offered. So if you need a certificate of completion to show on a grant or a grant proposal or for something like that, that you have training in special areas, consider taking one of our courses on LeanPub or Coursera. And this is just the table of all of the courses that we offer now and are planning to offer in the near future. So everything that says future course is actually under development currently. So we're working on many courses simultaneously. But in the workshop for the last few days, we've actually touched on several courses. So we touched on many of our courses, which will go into deeper detail if you're interested. And again, got some other future courses about containers for scientists, which you've seen a bit, but other topics as well. So we discussed a little bit about computing together, about how hardware works and data sizes and computational capacity. There's much more in that course about etiquette for using shared computing resources and guidance about making decisions for many of the resources that are designed for cancer research. There's a course about documentation and usability. So if you're making your own informatics tools, or maybe you just want to document your lab research really well, there's a lot of valuable information in this course as well. Candace talked a little bit about how you could use some of what we've learned with containers to move on to GitHub automations that can help you render reports based on changing some of your parameters for various analyses that you might be doing. So take a look at that if you're interested in automations. There's a lot more about the beginnings of reproducibility. Candace discussed a lot of the sort of concepts related to this, and there's some very basic projects that you can start with in terms of getting started on GitHub. And if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty and doing pull requests and that sort of thing, then you can follow the advanced course, which also covers some more about Docker if you want to get more practice. Also, we really like advertising this course. I'm a little biased because I wrote it, but if you are a lab leader or soon to be a lab leader, we have a course about how to lead informatics groups and how to lead multidisciplinary teams. So if that's of interest, I recommend checking that out as well. It also covers how to support more inclusive and diverse teams for research. Also, if you write a lot of scientific articles, which I imagine this audience does, you might be interested in learning more about LaTeX. That X should be capitalized there. And Overleaf, which is a really useful tool for using LaTeX to write scientific articles. So basically, if you have to send a manuscript to a few different journals and they all have different formatting, it can be really annoying. And LaTeX can help make that easier. Also, if you want to learn more about a variety of different genomic tools that are out there besides our lovely QIIME2 tools, there's many others that you can learn about. It's basically a living Wikipedia of different omics tools that you could potentially use and where to get started with those. They are featured, yes. But I think we probably covered pretty much everything that's in there. Also, there's a course on ethical data handling. So if you work with PHI or PII, how to effectively do that and work with that in a careful way. But also thinking about data collection, concerns for reuse of data if you're using a lot of genomic data, how you can share that data safely and respect research participants and support that. Also, if you're excited about AI, which many people are, we have a couple courses about that as well. So we have this one that's called AI for Decision Makers. Talks more about sort of the ethics of using AI for research, infrastructure that might be involved if you want to create or use AI tools to create new informatics tools, and also information about more of the basics of how it works, as well as policy and regulation that might be coming down the line for us in the United States. There's also another AI course that, for some reason, the slide is not rendering, that's about using AI for software development and coding. So check that out as well. We also have a variety of software products that are helpful for research outreach. So if you want to tell people about the work that you're doing, you might consider using them. So if you make any scientific software, you might consider our tool called Metric Miner. It can be useful for not only scientific software and tracking the usage of that, but even how many people are coming to your website, what are they interacting with, that sort of thing. it can be a really useful tool for that. And it makes making dashboards really easy in terms of gathering data from a variety of places. Yes, the data we collect. Yeah, Candace is saying that the data that we're collecting from our surveys ultimately goes into a dashboard that we've made to help us understand how we can do better at our workshops in a larger scale. We also have a tool called Otter, which stands for Open Source Tools for Training. And so if you would like to make websites or courses, this could be a really good tool for that. It allows us to publish, make changes in one place and publish to all of the places that we've shown for our courses. So it publishes that book down version on LeanPub and Coursera. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out. It's also useful just for websites. You can make your own dictionary, especially a dictionary, so you can use your own acronyms and it won't, keep checking for that. You can have it check for broken URLs, all sorts of nifty things. We also have a tool called Loqui, which converts slides. So say you have Google Slides or PowerPoint slides, you can convert that by it'll take the images from the slides themselves, and then the notes will become audio for a video. So it's using AI to create the audio for you. All right, so hope you find some of that useful. But now it's just our last survey. So you know the drill. We're going to use Slido one more time. And this is the code to join. We really appreciate all the feedback that you've been giving us.